Brilliant. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Just waiting a few seconds for more people to join us. Thanks for being bright and early to join us our webinar. This is the future of reforestation, carbon credits, prioritizing biodiversity and socio-economic benefits for effective carbon sequestration. I'm really excited to be here today. We actually had over 800 people subscribed to this webinar, so I think it's going to be an interesting conversation. We are going to be live both on Zoom and on LinkedIn Live, and this will be a very interactive webinar. So if you have a question, don't wait until the end of the webinar for you to ask that question. Just drop it here in our Q&A or in our chat function, and we will try to answer your question throughout the webinar. Okay, there's also a voting system on Zoom that you can vote. If you're on Zoom, you can vote for your favorite question, and I'll make sure to ask those questions that are most voted. But to start with, because we had so many people from so many places, please do write here in our chat function where you're logging in from. So I know we had people from New York, I see that coming in. We have people from London logging in. So which city or country, where you're logging in from. We had over 800 people sign up for the webinar. Just drop it here on our chat function, either on LinkedIn Live or on Zoom, just so we can see where you're all logging in from. We have people from Sao Paulo. We have a couple of people from France as well, more people from London, people from Rio. Love it. I'm loving it. So many people from different parts of the world interested in our conversation today. Brilliant. So let's start. Welcome, everyone. I'm Juliana Camargo, and I am your moderator for today's webinar. It's an absolute pleasure to be moderating this webinar today. We will be revealing a white paper which MORFO has worked on, which is on the title of The Future of Reforestation Carbon Credits. And this is a very key topic, it's a very important topic for the funding of nature preservation and restoration. So we're in for a very interesting conversation today. So carbon credits and offsets, as we know, are very broad topics. So today what we will really focus on will be on reforestation related carbon credits and how they can be used to restore more land. Okay. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing now, and I want to introduce our speakers. Hello, everyone. What I would love to start with is actually hearing from you guys, our experts here today. If you could please introduce yourself and just share with us how your role or how your background relates to carbon credits. So I'm going to start here with Casper. Casper, please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Casper Wendertek. I'm an economist by training, have been working in the climate change field for 27 years, and I've been in the carbon markets for a bit more than 20 years. I'm now senior consultant at Nutawa, which is a Swiss company, and I advise buyers and project developers in the carbon markets. Have done in the past some development myself, and also I've validated and verified carbon projects. So let me stop here and hand over to you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Excited to hear more from you, Casper. Katy, please, would you like to go next?
Yes, great, thank you. I'm Katy Baker, and I'm a nature risk consultant at the UN Environment Programme Finance Initiative. So the UNEP is a strategic partnership between the UN and the finance sector. And in our nature stream, we provide technical research and guidance, working with the financial community on innovations and frameworks and developing industry-wide tools linking science, policy, and finance, bringing nature into the heart of financial decision making.
Great, thank you so much, Katy. Adrien, would you like to go next, please?
Yes, with great pleasure. So I'm Adrien. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of MORFO. At MORFO, we are developing a solution that allows to do ecosystem restoration at scale, in particular in tropical, subtropical areas. And we are directly linked to the carbon market and carbon credits, as we are a service provider for carbon project developers in order to help them succeed in the establishments of ecosystem restoration and reforestation in those areas. So yeah, that's it in a few words.
Thanks very much, Adrien. Pierre, over to you.
Yeah, so I'll try and keep it short. Pierre-Alexandre Jivoult, so I'm head of product and innovation at EcoTree, which is originally a French company, now extending to Europe, where we actually restore and manage ecosystems to make sure that they thrive, as well for carbon and biodiversity. So if my background is more in finance, now I'm really responsible for making sure that our project has like the best impacts, not only in terms of carbon, but also in terms of biodiversity, choosing the right metrics and so on, so that we can actually finance such projects.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Pierre. Thank you for the brief introduction. I love seeing experts from so many different areas to discuss our topic today. You know, we have Katy on biodiversity, policy making. We have Adrien from an innovation point of view, Pierre as well, looking at how to use carbon credits, and Casper, of course, with your amazing history and background that you followed over the years in regards to this topic. So we are in for a treat here. Thanks so much for joining us today. So before I move on to the next question, or for the first question actually today, just wanting to welcome everyone that logged in over the past few minutes. Again, this will be a very interactive webinar. So if you have a question, don't wait until the end of the webinar to ask it. Just pop it here in a Q&A and we will try our best to ask it throughout the webinar. Okay, what we will also do is we will have the questions that I asked on our chat. So once I ask the question, someone from MORFO's team will also have that available for everyone to view that question, and you're able to read it on your own time so you understand what we're talking about at that particular time on our chat function as well. Okay, so brilliant. Welcome everyone. So let's start on our first question of today. And I guess it's a great question to start on this topic. So we're all heard about the recent carbon credits scandals brought to light earlier this year by the study in Science, along with the Guardian article, of course, and also the Zeit, or other studies. So I guess this is a great question. Casper, I'm looking at you here. How closely do you think these scandals that we've all seen come out earlier this year, how close do you think are connected to our discussion today?
Well, yeah, thank you for this question. I would say extremely close. You can imagine if you have a buyer, a company who likes to act well for the benefit of global society, want to act on climate change, you don't want to have your good intentions tainted by any negative publicity, any negative impact. So yeah, obviously this is going to shape demand. And I think what you're going to see is that, a reduction in the demand for carbon offsets. That's one of the items. A reduction in the demand for nature-based solutions. And then I'm not 100% sure what is going to happen within that field, because within that field, if you look at where the scandals have concentrated, they have been mostly in the field of REDD, not so much in restoration in the form of afforestation and reforestation projects. So I'm not sure how much these will be affected. Also within REDD, you have different types of REDD projects. So you have the protection against unplanned deforestation and protection against planned deforestation. And if you look at all the publicity, it has been mostly about projects that deal with unplanned deforestation. Now, I'm not sure whether the market is going to make that distinction. And that is something that we will need to see in the future. Yeah, it's a very interesting times. Let's see where we go. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thanks, Casper. I guess, Adrien, I'm looking at you now. Wondering if you have anything to add on this question?
Yes, of course. I think what's very interesting with the situation right now is that, in fact, it has large consequences on all the markets, and this creates like a unprecedented situation, but it's also a very good opportunity because it shows that now the market needs to move, the type of project needs to improve, and we need to go for better quality, better monitoring, and we really need to set up projects that have the impact that we are aiming for. And if we do this from the carbon project developer side, we can hope that this will be recognized and it will also increase the value. So I think it's a great moment, and it's a great push in the end for better quality and high quality carbon project in the reforestation field, but also in the conservation field, because I can hope that things are gonna change now. So overall, I think it's very nice, even though it can have on the short term some bad consequences, of course, for the financing of the project and the ongoing project.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Adrien. I think it's very interesting. I think you both touched on, looking at the low quality versus high quality credits. Such an important topic. I'm sure this is going to come up more in our conversation today. I'm already seeing questions coming through both on Zoom and LinkedIn Live. So thanks, guys. Keep them coming in because I will come back and answer them. For our next question, I would like to please speak to Pierre. I've been having a look at EcoTree. And I saw that EcoTree wasn't really heavily involved with carbon credits until recently, when your company began selling them. So EcoTree is currently sharing a series of videos aimed at distinguishing the fact from fiction when it comes to this topic. And I also saw very interesting one on the title, Discover How to Choose High Quality Carbon Credits in Just 4 minutes, which caught my attention as well. So what motivated this change in your perspective in regards to carbon credits?
Yeah, actually, thanks for this question. It's quite interesting because, I mean, historically, our main focus was like the whole, I mean, is still has always been the whole ecosystem, especially in France and Europe. So we actually try to restore essentially some forest and other ecosystems like wetlands and so on. And originally, we used to finance that by selling, giving the opportunity to people or companies to actually buy some trees. And we, of course, carbon is a very important metric, especially for companies, which wants to get some sort of return for what they finance. And but the main reason actually why we didn't sell carbon credits is because often I feel many people tend to forget that behind carbon credits there is an actual project. And we actually simply didn't have a methodology that was close enough to reality, to our practices, because we, in a nutshell, what we do is we have a forestry management that is based on a continuous cover, and we felt that the available methodologies were too short term and with some incentives to optimize carbon in the short term, and we wanted to have like a methodology that actually helped us better quantify our vision, so it's like very long term with no clear cut and so on. And so, as you can guess, developing a methodology, of course, we based it on like the most, well-known and robust standards. So we did not want to reinvent what was already available, just adapted it to the way we manage our forests so that it better reflects reality. And it takes time to get validated by a third party and so on. And now it's available, so we're able to quantify very accurately what we expect from our forestry management.
That's great. Thanks very much, Pierre. This is quite interesting because actually relevant to these two first answers or questions that were asked here, MORFO actually conducted a survey, and this is on the white paper. And I'm going to share my screen actually now because I think this is quite relevant to what was just discussed. And they asked, I think it was 212 professionals in the reforestation or carbon industries. So these are all of the backgrounds of the professionals that were that conducted the survey. I think some of you listening to this webinar were also part of the survey, so thanks for that. But what MORFO asked, and there's more information on the white paper, what MORFO asked is, do you differentiate between credit for preservation and reforestation? So interesting, you know, nearly 60% or 59.7% of people said, no, we should invest in both. Okay, so quite interesting link to our first two questions. And then further to that, what was asked in the survey was, what are your thoughts on the concept of generating carbon credits to support reforestation efforts? And again, nearly 70% of these 212 professionals said it's a viable solution, provided the credits are of high quality and purchased by companies committed to emission reduction. So it's interesting to hear from you, our audience who's participating here today, and people who were part of this survey. Right, let's go back. Again, more questions coming from our audience. Before I get into that, I actually want to now direct my next question to Katy, as I want to focus more on biodiversity and socio-economic benefits. So as an expert in this field, do you, you emphasize the essential role of indigenous people and local communities in conserving and maintaining global biodiversity? This aligns very much with the insights of MORFO's white paper that we've seen, and also suggesting that reforestation projects should be founded on these two pillars, biodiversity and social impact, which leads to carbon sequestration. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the challenges and potential solutions related to this?
Yeah, thank you. And great to be here on the panel today, talking about the two really important pillars that you've mentioned, social impact and biodiversity, in restoration projects and environmental markets. So I think I just want to start by zooming out a little, talking about the CBD COP15 last year, where the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework was signed, which is the equivalent to the climate agreements, which is hugely important for nature financing and calling a shift away from financing harmful activities to nature. So the GBF mentions Indigenous peoples and local communities 18 times, which really brings them to the foreground of transforming our relationship with nature on this globally agreed scale. And so all GBF goals and targets have links to Indigenous peoples and local communities and should be seen as underpinned by human rights-based approaches, including effective participation and free, prior and informed consent. So we really see the importance of IPs and LCs in stewarding global biodiversity. We've seen recent studies showing that over 50% of terrestrial species are actually managed by Indigenous peoples, and IPs and LCs have been doing a better job stewarding nature than state protectors often put up for this exact purpose. So transforming our relationship with nature requires foregrounding Indigenous peoples' rights and agency. So the question here is, how do we bring financial flows to those at the forefront of stewarding global nature? And so there are some challenges for both Indigenous peoples and local communities and for investors, which include the lack of an appropriate legal framework to recognise land rights, weak governance, exclusion, lack of capacity for community-led monitoring and enforcement. And actually, together, these represent a mix of real barriers and risks to investors, including financial, social, and environmental risks. So some key action points that I can give to include Indigenous peoples and local communities in markets, for example, is that the self and inclusive governance are linked to biodiversity outcomes, and the recognition of rights over natural resources enhances these biodiversity outcomes. And if you look at it this way, a purely market-driven approach can result in social exclusion and perverse incentives. So really, appropriate national policy framework allows these points that I've mentioned to be implemented in practice. And actually, an excellent example of this is the Ashaninka case in Brazil, where the community protocols were recognized as legal instruments known as the biodiversity law. So with this protocol, the Ashaninka reaffirmed their role as the guardians of the forest in the Amazon region. And so another thing is really determining the appropriate safeguards and guidance to apply. And here, this is where investors should identify in any shortcomings in existing safeguards against international human rights standards and take measures to close any gaps. For example, through additional contractual measurements with project developers. Finally, maybe I'll just make this point of benefit sharing, which is financial and non-financial. And investors in the carbon market have largely relied on intermediaries to apply safeguards and provide assurances through third parties that IPs and LCs are respected and on board with this project. But this approach leaves a degree of risk that is possible to reduce by these closer relationships with an earlier stage of the project, particularly where the project model is locally led. And investors should consider going beyond safeguards-based approach to build relationships on fair terms. And so these safeguards and guidance are already widely available that can support these mutual benefits, but they're just often too poorly or insufficiently applied. And countries starting to legislate this for the carbon markets are Kenya, Tanzania, and Zimbabwe as some examples, and are learning lessons on how this can be handled appropriately through cultural relevant engagement processes, with all the knowledge and understanding and proximity to key areas of biodiversity being involved in individual beyond being involved in these projects. IPs and LCs should play this leading role in development of the markets.
Brilliant, Katy. Thank you so much. Actually, as you were speaking, we had more questions come up related to this. There is one question in the chat, which I think you pretty much answered this question, which is what are the key issues you see arising from biodiversity credits market? But there's another question here. So basically, a key principle of the carbon credits mechanism is that companies would reduce their emissions first and then offset the remaining emissions. However, this has not happened, and companies are mostly buying carbon credits without reducing their emissions first, which does not work for fighting climate crisis. Why do you think the situation will change going forward?
Yeah, maybe I'll address the first one first. So I think the key issues that I see arising is really the discussion between categorizing biodiversity on a single measure of biodiversity that is universally applicable and tradable, or if we decide that biodiversity is too complex for one measure, and that's then there we have to make the best estimate of it. And so I think this definition and standardization is one hurdle that is to overcome for the biodiversity credit market. Of course, I think greenwashing and claims is also a huge hurdle that we've seen with the carbon market as well. And I think here it's having high integrity principles and creating robust methodologies from the start that are transparent is really key.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Adrien, do you have anything to add?
Yes. So on the second question, I think it's a very relevant question to ask, because in fact, if we do not reduce first, all this makes a little bit nonsense. But I also think that from the point of view of the market, we see that we have a very, very important need for restoration and for development of carbon project. And we talk about reforestation, but there's all natural-based projects and there's techno-based projects that are, for most of them, are at various stage of development that is already super early. And we really need to invest in those solutions. And even though we still have some companies that are not perfectly reducing, and the market need to be improved on this point, we also need investment on the other end. So I think, and we need a lot of investment very fast. So I think what would be very interesting is to say, okay, let's push this investment. And of course, there will be like some failures, some greenwashing, of course, but things are moving and we can like with better project and with on the other end, more global, national laws and public pressure, we can of course change things. And this will allow us to go from like this greenwashing to green acting market and allow us to evaluate. But I think like we shouldn't like denunciate the fact that you have still some companies that are greenwashing, and we should not accept a compensation market, but really go for a contribution market. But in the other end, this evolution will take time, of course, and will not be perfect. And in the meantime, we still need to invest a lot because we are not going to restore our forest in 30 years. So it's now. And we cannot wait that everything is perfect to act. So I think it's very important, very valuable to think like that, but it's also very important to move forward and act.
Great, thank you very much. And Adrien, I guess just with a question for you still on the topic of biodiversity. How can we explain that 90% of reforestation projects are still primarily using low biodiversity seedlings?
Because it's difficult. So the first, there's many reasons actually, but one of the three main reasons for me are first, it's super difficult to recreate an ecosystem or biome, and no one can say that he knows how to do it perfectly, because this is not true, and no one will know exactly, never. So you need a lot of knowledge and you need a lot of science behind. So this has a cost. Okay, it's very important. First thing, it's really the knowledge. Second thing, it's also like the complexity of implementation of such project and the valuation of such project on the market so far. Because so far, like this biodiversity was not even talked about really and valued on the market, and still it's difficult to value biodiversity because it's difficult to monitor and the market is not mature. So, and we are talking about market, so we are talking about money. So if you don't have the money to finance your biodiversity, how are you gonna be biodiverse? So I think the other problem is the complexity and the valuation of the market. And I think the last one also is that, well, it's a little bit linked. It's the perception of the forest and the carbon that we had so far. A lot of people were focusing mostly on carbon, and now we are moving to something where we are not only, of course, considering carbon, but considering biodiversity. And we know now that biodiversity is better for carbon, by the way, so it's a good point. And also social impact. So now we are moving to more holistic vision. It's very, very interesting. But this also comes with a cost. And we need a market to be ready to assume this cost. And this is a challenge. So I think that's most of the reason. But to still give some hope, things are changing, and I am seeing on the field more and more, and where we are developing projects in Brazil, and I know there's some project developers here, and I talked to some of them. Like most of the people now wants diversified project with right environmental impact, right social impact. So it takes time to develop them, but I think like in the next year, we're really gonna see a good move forward for biodiversity. It's going to be challenging also, but things are changing, and that's a very good point. And a lot of people are not understanding this.
Brilliant. Let's hope so. And Casper, you have your mic off. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that if you focus on one or two species for reforestation, well, first of all, the investments costs are going to be much lower, but also quantifying the amount of expected carbon credits is going to be easier. So you can make much more specific projections about the amount of carbon credits that you're going to deliver, which is an advantage from a pure climate perspective, right? Second, also, when it comes to monitoring, if you have only one or two species to monitor, it's so much easier than if you have a complex system that you need to monitor. So yes, it's very nice to try to recreate a natural ecosystem. It's something that we should do, but unfortunately, there are cost implications that are associated with it. Complexity, like Adrien mentioned, especially when it comes to monitoring. So yeah, I think those are a few aspects that need to be taken into account.
That's great. Thanks, Casper. And I guess I had a question here for Pierre, which is also very much related to that. So when considering biodiversity and socioeconomic benefits, do they come with higher costs, which Casper was just referring to? And is there an increased demand for such high quality credits?
Yeah, so actually, I completely agree with what Casper just mentioned. Basically, I mean, the more complex the ecosystem and the more diversity there is, like in the species of trees that you use and so on, the more costly it becomes to actually monitor, to manage the forest and so on. The thing is, we are choosing the hard way because we believe that, you know, we need to stay a bit humble in front of nature and understand that ecosystems are like so complex. They cannot be just reduced to just a few species. And basically, there might be higher costs based directly, linked directly to the difficulty or the complexity of the ecosystem that you are restoring or that you are creating. And also mechanically, you could have like two identical projects with the same cost and everything. And depending on the baseline scenario, you could have like different number of tons and prices are completely different. And then again, if you want to have a bigger impact on the biodiversity, you might not want to optimize choose your carbon credits only on the baseline scenario. You don't want to maximize the carbon credits. So basically, with the same cost, you might have less tons additional carbon credits, and so mechanically, I mean, it makes the price higher. But I think what's key, and we touched on that a bit with Katy, and basically, biodiversity is very hard to quantify. And that's why it's so important to kind of make sure we don't try to maximize carbon. We accept complexity, and we need to ensure that we don't try to take the price as low as possible. You know, it's not the right metric to look at, and maybe accept to finance less effective, less efficient project. You know, just to have like better quality ones. And for the needs, that was maybe a bit long, but just for the needs that we observed, we observed that many clients, at least with the conversation we have with some prospects of some clients, a few months back, we were quite often we see people that are just accounting views, and we emitted that many tons, we want that many removed carbon tons. And more and more, we see people that actually say, okay, I know I won't be able to offset everything. I don't even want to try to offset everything, but I just want to find something that is good, that makes sense. And they actually look at the co-benefits for society or biodiversity as well, on top of just the carbon figure.
Brilliant, thanks, Pierre. And I heard you say that at EcoTree, you actually chose the hard way through biodiversity. And it made me actually think, Adrien, MORFO also chose that way. Do you want to explain why?
Yes, with pleasure. But basically, it's very simple, because at MORFO, the base of what we do is that we optimize the volume, maximize the biodiversity in every of our projects. And we are planting every type of species that would be needed, and that is not even valued from a carbon perspective, that would be needed to restore the ecosystem. So it's a very holistic approach to say, we are not here to maximize this, we are here to build a resilient ecosystem that will be able to last without us, and to be autonomous. So, and this is very challenging, because the more species you have, the more interaction you have that you need to know, and the more complexity you have, of course, and the more uncertainty, and inaccuracy. And I think this is something we really need to embrace if we want to restore in a biodiverse way, to embrace uncertainty and inaccuracy, which is very difficult from a finance perspective because it's not really common and we are not really used to this. But we are talking about nature, and we don't really know nature. So if we want to put a price on this, if we want to value it, we have to accept that it's going to be, but I think has been said really well, that we don't really know the cost of it. But what we need to see is that, okay, what are going to be the co-benefits, what's the structure that we are putting in place, and okay, what can be the good consequences of it. And this is really like the change that we can observe in the market. But to reinforce what you were asking, I think from what I see on the market, that there is a big willingness for this, and there's a big change. There's still some accounting of carbon, of course, but things are moving fast. So very good point.
Brilliant, thanks, Adrien. I'm glad to hear there's such positivity, and thanks for an answer in such a complex topic. And actually, Casper, I think a burning question: do you think companies are ready to pay higher costs?
Yeah. Well, the short answer, well, first of all, thank you for the question, which is really great. Yeah, you see an increased willingness from the side of companies to invest in projects that can be seen as the right type of projects. So high quality projects that take into account biodiversity, socio-economic perspectives, poverty aspects. All of these aspects integrated. There's an increased demand for it. You can also see a premium for this type of credits. One thing that I'm not completely 100% sure about is whether the premium that is available in the market, whether that is sufficient to cover the additional cost. And one of the things that I found is that for a lot of buyers, it's not so much a matter of how much good they can do, it's more avoiding any negative narrative. So the focus tends to be a little bit defensive. Invest in a project that can be shown as good for biodiversity. Invest in a project that is good for indigenous people, that has poverty reduction elements. Yes, all very good, but then maximizing those aspects, that is not really getting rewarded. Getting the stamp that it is a good type of project with positive impacts, yes, that gets rewarded. Also, for example, when it comes to land, access to land, they're avoiding an association with a negative narrative is often more important than the positive that you can accomplish. And well, I can, if you allow, I can elaborate on one of the experiences of one of my clients, or if you prefer me not to do that, let me continue and you interrupt if it is not needed, okay? One of my clients is focusing on a reforestation project on land that has in the past had a conflict about the land, a government action that was unrelated to the project owner, my client. However, when people do their due diligence as a buyer, whether they want to buy these carbon credits, they see this past conflict and they will say, no, we are not going to buy carbon credits from this project. And this is really a pity because the project owner, although it's not their issue, has gone through some type of mediation process. They have committed that part of the carbon credit revenues will be allocated to compensate the indigenous people that are living on these areas, even though they haven't been involved directly themselves as project owner from the start. And now this compensation mechanism is cut off. So that is what I mean. Instead of realizing that there is something positive that can be done, they see the negative narrative that may come back to hurt the potential buyer. And so they say no. So this is a little bit of a pity. I think the market may need a little bit more education on a number of aspects. Sorry, that was meandering a little bit. My apologies.
No, that's great, Casper. Thanks for sharing some real examples of what's happening right now. So I appreciate that. I actually have a question for Katy next, but I just want to highlight that we got lots of questions coming on our Q&A. So I invite you, if you're watching us, to start voting on the questions you would like me to prioritize. So if you just click the thumbs up on the Zoom Q&A chat, or if you're on LinkedIn Live, start voting for your favorite question and I will make sure to answer them today. So Katy, just very much linked to this and linked to biodiversity, could biodiversity credits you're working on be the future or complement to carbon credits? And this actually relates to a question on the Q&A from Chris Lucas. Is it a mechanism to boost the value of higher quality projects?
Yeah, thank you. So maybe I could just give an overview of the landscape of where biodiversity credits markets are right now. There's so much progress with them. We're seeing more joining the market rapidly. We currently see governments, including New Zealand and the UK, publicly consulting on and planning implementing these programs. So we're really seeing a lot of movement with these markets. And actually, there was a Bloomberg article earlier this year that that stated the developing existing biodiversity credit schemes that cover more than 800,000 hectares already have $8 million USD funding so far pledged. And I think there was another one that said the market could reach over $8 billion US annually by 2030 and over 40 billion by 2050. So we're really seeing a lot moving in the biodiversity credit markets. And maybe moving to your question on, how do I see them in the future and complementing carbon credits? I absolutely see the biodiversity credit market leveraging the extensive experience that's been gained from the voluntary carbon market. And the vast majority of actors in the voluntary carbon market have been well-intentioned, but governance principles just have not been established rapidly enough. So I see the biodiversity credit market is quick to adopt the lessons from introducing safeguards, integrity principles, assessment frameworks, as well as mechanisms like grievance handling, which were integrated into the voluntary carbon market. And so many actors now are working to put in place the governance and transparency mechanisms. And one example of this is the UN-supported Biodiversity Credits Alliance, which offers guidance for establishing a credible and expandable market that can withstand the scrutiny of various stakeholders, notably Indigenous peoples and local communities who play a pivotal role in guiding the BCA's initiatives. So that this alliance is working to ensure strong foundations and principles exist and can be applied in all market participants going forward. So I see the ICBCM as a promising approach that can be considered and potentially integrated into the biodiversity credit markets at a later stage. And of course, the biodiversity credit market is a complement to carbon finance. And in the future, I think we can see more aspects of nature, such as water and other natural assets included in that too.
Thanks, Katy, for answering that. And this all really also reminds me of one of the surveys also on MORFO's white paper. And I'm going to share my screen again because I think this is really relevant now. So MORFO again asked this group of professionals, just bear with me. So do you support the creation of certificates that promote carbon sequestration as well as benefits for biodiversity and local communities, for example? So with what we were just saying, we had over 70% of people saying yes. So quite interesting link there to what we were just discussing. So back to our panelists and actually back to you audience watching us. We had so many people starting to vote for questions. So I am seeing what you're voting, and there's a very popular question here, which I would like to leave it open to our panelists, whoever would like to answer it. So this question is from Vitor, and he's asking, How do you see the use of a productive approach for forest restoration with some species that can support, create new value chains to generate other revenues in addition to carbon credits? So he adds that unfortunately the current prices for ARR credits are not able to pay off the investment on forest reforestation in most of the countries, including Brazil, for example. Would anyone like to answer that? I can see Pierre and Adrien, your mics are off. Do you want to start? Adrien, do you want to go for it? Oh, sorry, Pierre,
Pierre, if you want to start.
Sorry, no, apologies.
Okay, no, it's just in a minute, very short. Actually, I think it's crucial to include this and to have this approach, just to actually to value the wood products and so on, and especially if you quantify as carbon stored in wooden materials, it's very important to have it. Otherwise, I mean, again, there is no easy answer, because you still need to leave some dead wood in the forest, for instance, because it's crucial for biodiversity. But if you do so, the half-life of such material is only, I think, around 10 years. And so there is, I mean, it's much better if you manage to value high quality timber and to engage in the local economy and make sure that this wood is going to be used and actually store carbon in the very long run. So again, I think it's another way to finance. It's a part of financing a project. And I think it's very important to see and be able to have the right metrics and the right products to make sure that you can finance a good project that is complex with like many resources, whether from carbon credits, but also from the timber revenue.
Thanks, Pierre. Adrien, would you like to add?
Yes. Well, I think, Pierre, you have a strong bias with EcoTree because you already have this timber vision. But actually, you can build a productive forest in other ways that are also very efficient.
And also very European view, maybe. It might not be relevant in
Exactly. But I think in Europe, it's very good. And I was going to say that it really depends also of where you are at. Where are you, and where do you create this forest? Because, for instance, us, we are working on some project in the Amazonian forest. Making a productive forest there will not make a lot of sense, because it would be like not useful to anyone. You can already already have a strong forest that you can expand and consolidate. So productive would make no sense. But you have some other areas more anthropized. So for instance, in Europe, but also like, for instance, if we stay in Brazil and more in the south of Brazil, where it's essential to build a project where you combine all types of forests for, of course, the financial aspects of the project, but also just for the coherence of the project, because if you have people living there, if you already have like an economy that is in place, you need to have this holistic approach and to integrate all this in your forest if you want to build something resilient. So I think it's a very, very good question, Victor. And I think in fact, there's not a simple answer. It really depends on where you are, what the economic model you want to put, who are the people around, what's the economy in place, because if you want to do timber, but you don't have an economy for timber around, it would make no sense, absolutely no sense. But this is all those things to consider. But in fact, we will need wood product, we will need to eat, and forest is super valuable. You also have like other products, you have seeds, you have also medicines. So there's a lot of ways to valorize forest. And I think it's important because valorizing forest, it's also a way to protect it. So it's very, very, very relevant and important.
That's great. Thanks, Adrien. And I guess another trend that I actually saw on MORFO's white paper was the importance of data and measurement. They were central theme of the white paper. Pierre, I guess, just going back to you, can you help us understand why you think data and measurement are such an important theme when it comes to this topic?
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, first reason, the most basic one, is that you need, I mean, if you carry a project, if you build it and so on, you need to be able to keep track of what you're doing and what's your actual impact. If we were just like planting trees and then forgetting about the forest, it would not make any sense. And so basically, as we plan ahead. Usually for such project, I guess we all the same for a very, very long time. However, we can't predict everything. So of course, we take like the necessary measures and so on. We manage the risk and so on, applying some buffers and what's needed. But then it's very important for us to go on the field, just at least to adapt our management if need be. If we observe that, you know, for some reason, something has changed or wasn't expected, or maybe we need to change something. Again, thing remaining like quite humble and that we can't know everything. That's the first reason. First of all, for good management, you need to kind of see what you're doing and how you're doing. And then there's also this financing issue. When companies actually are buying high quality projects, when they have like a carbon metrics, that might be fine. But now, as we mentioned earlier, they are getting more and more interested into higher quality projects. And you need to be able to prove that it's an actual fact and that you had a positive impact and you can actually quantify it. Even though I don't really like the idea of like quantifying biodiversity, like to reduce it to a quantity or a number is so complex. I mean, to have like there are so many metrics to look at, and all ecosystems are different. So it doesn't make sense to compare the metric you get in one ecosystem to the other. I mean, you might not have the same species, not have the same flora and fauna and so on. But it's really important to give this this vision and the way to the financing companies or entities to be able to see where the money actually went and what was the actual impact. So again, so good management, just make sure you keep track of everything, and then make sure you collect as enough metric to be able to get, to give this metrics and maybe add it to some extra financial reporting, because I think it's going to be the key to finance such projects.
Sorry, I was on mute there. Thanks so much, Pierre. I think this, there's some very burning questions, and this was such an important one. As we move towards the end of the webinar, Adrien, is it really possible to accurately measure aspects like trees, carbon, and nature?
I think a lot of people are wondering this.
Yes.
So it's a big question for everyone. I think it's very challenging. And actually no one has a real answer. And nature, I can say no, so that's for sure. But after, the idea is more to say, okay, we want to measure because we want feedbacks. We want to be able to manage, like Pierre was saying, but we want to be able to measure, also to be able to show, to bring transparency, because transparency like create quality and create confidence. And I think the market needs confidence. But we also have to understand, and even more as we are talking with biodiversity, that what we are not going to measure what we don't completely understand. Okay, so maybe at some points the idea is not to measure everything or absolutely. I was talking about accepting inaccuracy. Okay, the idea is to bring more transparency, to bring more measurement. But will it be perfect? I don't think so. Do we need to be perfect? I don't think so. No. We need the market to believe. We need good project. We need project developers that show everything, that are transparent, and they show when there's a problem, and they show where there's a success. Because as we are working with nature, there will be a lot of problems and a lot of success also. So, and this can change the market, And I think this is really the thing. But still, we need to have measurements. We need new technology. We are doing this at MORFO. We promote all this, we promote this transparency. So this is something in which we really believe. I really do believe, but will we be able to do it perfectly? I'm not, I don't know.
Thanks, Adrien. Again, another complex topic. And as you were all speaking today, we've got so many questions from our audience coming in. So thank you very much for everyone and everyone who voted on their favorite questions. MORFO teams just made me aware that what they will do is have a look at all of these questions, answer them, and then share content around this question. So thanks, MORFO's team, to saying that. Unfortunately, we can't answer everything here today. So I have a final question for today, and this is for everyone, for all of our panelists, all of our experts here. what advice would you offer companies looking to finance nature positive projects such as reforestation? So before you answer, have a think about this question. And I just want to make a really quick announcement for everyone watching. So if you did enjoy the webinar, the content we're discussing here today, make sure to follow MORFO's newsletter. I think the team here will share the link to MORFO's newsletter where more content like this is shared. And also, if you haven't yet downloaded the white paper, again, MORFO's team will share it here on the chat, both on Zoom and LinkedIn Live for you to download it. So back to our final question today. What advice, for our team of experts here, what advice would you offer to companies looking to finance nature positive projects such as reforestation? Would anyone like to start? Casper, go for it.
Yeah, well, actually, I'm already seeing it in the market. There are a lot of buyers out there that are not satisfied anymore with buying credits that come out of the market. So they're not buying spot anymore, but they're seeking a long-term relationship with developers of projects. And they want to get involved at the early start so that they can shape the project, make sure that it touches upon all aspects that they value, that are important for the buyer, be it social issues, be it biodiversity, be it other aspects. Be there from the start, maybe co-finance the project, maybe take an equity stake in a project, but certainly co-develop it. And then make a long-term commitment to buy the offsets that will be coming from the project over a longer time period of maybe 10, maybe 15 years. So that is something that I'm seeing. And I think to me that makes a lot of sense, because doing that, you have a lot of control over the quality of the project, and you can really make sure that the project that you're getting your offsets from is a proper high quality project. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Who would like to go next? Katy?
Okay.
Oh, Pierre, you and Mike.
Yeah, no, I can continue. It's obviously very complex question. I wish I could answer like very simply. But well, I think the most crucial is to remember that we are dealing with nature and with physical phenomenon, and not forget that, you know, it's not just accounting. And I think the key mistake is to consider carbon credits just as pure accounting and having an objective of pure offset, you know, ton for ton. And I think this is quite dangerous because it actually gives you an incentive to find like the cheapest carbon credits, forgetting about the impact on the ecosystem and or the society or the population, the local population. So again, I think it's just, and also to understand that, you know, models are good and they are needed, as Adrien just mentioned. You need to be able to give some measures and to some sort of reassurance and reassure people so that they can know what they're buying, and you can prove that the impact was right and real and so on, concrete and tangible. But these are all proxies that are just here to give us an indication on how well the project is going. And I think it would be quite absurd to be willing to measure everything. So again, I think try and focus on the co-benefits of your action. Don't be only focused on the performance. It's just one figure. It's just one figure is not enough. A project is very complex. Nature is very complex. Don't look at the whole picture. Easier said than done.
Thanks, Pierre. Katy, over to you.
Thank you. And I absolutely echo the points that I've already made. Maybe I'll point the audience into some useful tools from our side. So UNEP has a positive impact CPO database called the Restoration Factory, and the team has done a lot of pipeline development impact KPIs. And so the Restoration Factory is a program that assists restoration entrepreneurs in developing attractive business models of restoration. The second one is our new Green Shoot series, which every year we are thinking about the most innovative ways to finance nature and what are the major innovations and opportunities in the market, really focusing on structuring innovations, which I think would help finance institutions and companies think about how to finance particular topics. maybe to give a high level closing point, I would stress that private finance really needs to take a greater share of nature finance, because otherwise we won't be able to close the gap. Private finance currently needs to innovate and do more, and really echoing Pierre on the co-benefits, really focusing that our nature contribution also contributes to climate goals. So looking at climate and nature products holistically will help us combat the triple planetary crisis, while also promoting this just transition which we're striving for.
Thanks, Katy. And Adrien, over to you. Final thoughts.
Yes, but I think you already said a lot, guys, huh? So I'm not gonna repeat anything. I mostly want to thank you for saying it before me. That's perfect, and for all the relevant contributions you made so far. I think all the questions of the audience are very nice too. And overall, I think we agree on the fact that like we need to increase the level. It takes a lot of work. It brings a lot of complexity. So buyers should also understand this complexity and go for it and embrace it if they want to be able to co-develop a long-term project with us, and to have a real impact that is not only carbons but also environment, social, all types of co-benefits. And with this, we will be able to create a real value and hopefully stable market and growing market for the good of all of us. So that's it.
Brilliant, thank you. Some great final thoughts and insights from Adrien and from all of our teams of experts. I would like to thank you so much for being part of today's webinar. So many different backgrounds, but I think there was a lot of common ground today as well in such a complex topic. I'd like to thank MORFO's team as well, and everyone for watching us. Until next time, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.